The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the 2021 Show Me the Money. This is Victoria Beal with the LTAP Center, and we are so pleased to be able to host this webinar series for you. Traditionally, we'd be in the auditorium having a day-long, what I call drink from the fire hydrant, with all the funding program managers, but we're doing it virtually this year, and we are so glad that you've joined us. If we are successful in recording the session, we will send out a link afterwards. But even if we aren't successful with the technology, we'll definitely still send out copies of the PowerPoint presentations from today's session. So if you have questions, and we hope you have lots of them, please put them in the question box at any time during the session this morning, and we will work to get you responses. With that, I'm going to turn things over to our first presenter, Andrea Stevenson.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you to the LTAP Center for hosting our Show Me the Money today. We are excited to be back on the schedule and be back in sharing all the great details about our local funding programs with our stakeholders, consultants, and our local communities. So let's go ahead and get started. We do appreciate you joining the webinar. And the whole intent of today's webinar and the three-part series is to really show you the money. We want, as a department, to help keep you informed and to help educate you about what's available for our local communities as you move forward with building your important infrastructure projects. This is a three-part series to educate Ohio's locals and communities about available federal dollars and state dollars and how you can be successful in leveraging those funds for your projects across the state. So let's get this rolling. Here's what you can expect to learn not only today, but in the next two sessions. We want to be able to share ideas about transportation funding, and we hope that you will learn from them as well. Not only learn from us, but learn from each other and our district offices. Our districts are at the grassroots of reaching out to the locals and providing that support and providing that information. And so having a collaborative effort, not only here today, but always when we're trying to get infrastructure funded, is a win-win for everybody. We want you to have an understanding of the big picture perspective. And that's what today is going to be about. Specific program details are also important, and our subject matter experts and our program managers during the course of this three-part series will help give you those tips and advice for applying and utilizing funds, and really how to be successful in submitting excellent applications and understanding the expectations of our programs and the people that select the projects. So we have an exciting agenda today. First and foremost, we are going to talk about ODOT finance and funding, and Jonathan Heckert of our finance division will be presenting the big picture, so to speak, as to what that looks like, not only for the department, but for those who are stakeholders and participate with us in the process. Next, we will have Brenna Smathers of our State Infrastructure Bank, and she's a great person to know because this is an opportunity for our local partners to borrow money and work on getting those last few dollars on a project so that they can get to construction. And then finally, we're going to have Jennifer Klein from the Ohio Public Works Commission submit and talk about some of the programs that they have available to locals as well. While we are two separate state agencies, they have a terrific program there, and Jennifer will be able to provide some insightful information about what they do there and how we could partner with funding on projects for everybody. So just a few fun facts as we move forward and get today started. When we talk about improving communities and providing infrastructure dollars to locals, both those federal and state dollars, the state averages or typically has about $320 million annually in discretionary funds available to locals. And so this crosses the modal spectrum. It's for aviation, it's for transit, it's for bike and ped facilities, and it's for bridges, it's for roadways, and so it crosses all modes, but that's typically what we have available. And so we want you to know that we take this very seriously, that we see locals as our partners and stakeholders in the process, and we're here to ensure that we work together in having an excellent transportation system here in the state of Ohio. What's interesting about this is we do have about 17 different program opportunities for locals. Now, this does change from time to time, but as you can see, lots of different modal type categories and opportunities for locals to kind of consider what their greatest needs are and then work at applying for those funds or those grant opportunities. Now, the $320 million and the 17 program opportunities apply to ODOT only. That does not include what the Ohio Public Works Commission has available to them. And Jennifer will be able to elaborate on that. But I also want to direct you to some resources that will be available. And as we have this three-part series, we will begin to drill down on those details a little bit more. But if you are intrigued and you're interested and you've got to do it right now, you can go to ODOT's website, you type in funding, and there's a whole host of programs and information available to you, even if you're a consultant and you're supporting those locals, that you can research and start getting some ideas on. I do want to direct you to our cute little resource guide that we have here. It is available. We update it at least once a year with all the new program updates, and we make that available to our districts and to locals. And when we're out presenting and meeting with locals, we make this available to everybody who wants it. Again, I want to thank our LTAP Center for all of their support in helping with this webinar today, but this is just a small part of what they do. They do provide training for local staff through the local technical assistance program, and so there's a tremendous amount of information on the website to have LTAP resources as well. They're not always funding related, they're technical in nature. But it's a great opportunity to look for how you can save money with keeping your staff trained, and just always looking for operational and administrative ways to reduce cost. And LTAP is one resource where you can do that. Other resources for your team is TIMS. It has a lot of infrastructure, geographical type of information, regional information in it that you can obtain about your roadways. Your RTPOs, your MPOs and FHWA are also great resources. Again, ODOT district offices, the LPA managers, the construction and planning administrators, the planning engineers are all wonderful people to get information from. The Ohio Public Works Commission, ODNR, is also one of our state agency partners that will be on this series, and you can look forward to hearing from them as well. Then again, we have all of our transportation stakeholders. That's all of you. We appreciate you being on today. And lastly, we have guides, manuals on the website where you can get more information about a variety of things that we're doing here at the department to really support our stakeholders, our locals, our consultants, and those that really are trying to do a great job in keeping our system in an excellent, top-notch condition. So one thought about being competitive. As we look at this three-part series and you're thinking about, as a local, what it means to apply and what it means to be successful, we want to let you know that there is a tremendous need at the local level for funding. You already know that. If you're a consultant, you know that. Money's tight, and so we want to make sure that when we are getting applications from you, that they are competitive, that they're excellent, they're well thought out, and they have everything in them that's going to help you get down that path of getting a project started. So we actually receive, and this is probably obvious, a lot more requests for funding than what we have available funds. And so that is the real struggle way. We would love to fund every project that comes in. We simply can't. And so that's why it is competitive, why we pick the projects that have the best data, have the greatest need, and have the best applications submitted for a community. And so it's super important that you keep that on the top of your list, that you know it's competitive and you're competing against other communities across the state. So we do look for excellent project applications that have great potential, a return on the investment, and really can support the communities that they're coming from. Here are a few tips for an effective application strategy. Start the process early. It's important that when you look at our calendar of events for funding on an annual basis, and we have that available for 2022 right now, that you're planning ahead, that you're thinking about the projects, that you're talking to the mayor or the county commissioners or whoever the stakeholders are that need to be in the process. You've got to make sure that you can demonstrate that purpose and need for that project and really be able to explain, we've got a new factory coming in and the road needs to be widened or whatever the case may be. You want to gather the information and you want the facts to tell the story about your project so that you tell a fantastic story when we're sitting in our cubicles in Columbus reading the application. We want to make sure we get the full picture and we understand the true need of what's happening in your communities. Follow the guidelines and submit excellent applications. And that is a strategy for success. And so we look forward to it. And this is really a fantastic opportunity and honor to be able to sit down and look at these applications from across the state. And so we encourage you to reach out to us in your district LPA manager. If you're starting the process, doing it for the first time, or a repeat customer, we like working with you and like to be able to provide that support. So feel free to reach out to us at all times with questions. How does your project get awarded? Definitive transportation need, community support, those facts that I've talked about, accurate cost estimates. It's got to be easy to read. I would really just sit down and prefer to have an easy to read application and something that what was coming from the community rather than something with a lot of extracurricular words and detail in it. Photos are excellent, graphics are important, and maps are super important for being able to understand where we're at and what the project entails from a termini perspective. Lastly, we just encourage our applicants to be responsive. A lot of times we give second and third chances, and what I mean by that is if an application comes in and it may not have the complete set of detail, we'll say, hey, can you just clarify this for us? And so, send something back to us, respond to the program managers, and make sure that we have all the detail necessary to really evaluate your application as it should and deserves to be evaluated. If at first you don't succeed, please try again. It's so important because of the funding that it goes so quickly to so many great projects. We do want you to try again. On many occasions, projects do get awarded on their second or third tries if they meet the criteria and it has an excellent purpose and need. Take a look at our recommendations that we send back to you. A lot of times we're going to provide details to you as to what is needed to improve the application on your second try. And so that's important for you to understand and take a second look at the project. Can it be, can the scope reduce in size, those sorts of things to maybe make the funding request a little tighter. So those are all important aspects of the application. Refine and adjust the application, and it may require a few attempts, as I mentioned. So this is an exciting time for us. We have a lot of opportunities to work with all of you, and we want to do that. I do want to let you know that some of the additional programs we're going to be talking about in our upcoming webinars will be ODNR, the MPO and Large City Program, Safe Routes to School TAP, the Muni Bridge Program, Local Major Bridge, and Small City Programs. And so here's the schedule, and we certainly invite you to register and sign up. There's plenty of time to do that. And we do appreciate you being on today. And so now we are going to show you the money, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Jonathan Heckert from the Division of Finance. And I'm going to log off. And Jonathan, it's all yours. So thank you for the opportunity to give you a few tips and points of advice as you move forward through this three-part series. So thank you and have a great day.
All right, thank you, Andrea. So like Andrea said, my name is Jonathan Heckert. I am with the Division of Finance here at ODOT, and today we will be talking about some of our funding. First, we're going to go into ODOT's funding sources, and then we're going to get into state motor fuel tax distributions, some of the impacts from the pandemic, and then a brief touch on the new infrastructure bill from the federal government. So first, funding sources. I wanted to first start off with the registration revenue that the state is now receiving. During the past budget bill, House Bill 62, that increased the motor fuel tax back in July of 2019. There was also a component that established fees for electric and hybrid vehicles. Those went into effect January 1st, 2020. And we have a chart here to show the collections from January 2020 through the end of October 2021. So you can see here, the state as a whole has collected almost $30 million in revenues from those fees. For the locals specifically, it was just over 13 million. And that breakdown is just over 4 million for EVs and then 9 million for hybrid vehicles. Next, we're going to go into the primary funding sources. So this chart is a picture of our fiscal year 22 projections for what we'll have for funding over the course of this current fiscal year. So our primary funding sources are made up of, the majority is the state motor fuel tax and then federal motor fuel tax. And then also we do some bond issuances, and then we receive general revenue fund and state special revenues, which assist us with the funding for public transit, rail, and aviation programs and initiatives. We also utilize any unused funding from a prior fiscal year, which we call carry forward, to fund ongoing needs as well. Now, for our primary uses, again, this is a depiction of the fiscal year 22 fiscal year, and our primary sources then go to fund our needs and uses. So ODOT currently allocates roughly $1.2 billion in funding for preservation needs, which includes pavement and bridge across the state. We have almost $1 billion of funding that goes towards various operating costs such as payroll, salt, materials, equipment, and facilities. ODOT provides a little over $350 million to our local partners across the state. And then ODOT is responsible for paying debt service for previously issued bonds. For fiscal year 22, those payments are just over $300 million. Now, going back to fiscal year 21 and showing the impacts that the federal aid highway funding had on our locals. So here we have $346 million approximately that was allocated out to the local government programs through the federal aid highway funding. The majority of that goes to MPOs and the 5 large cities. And ODOT was required to provide $121 million to large MPOs in fiscal year 21. Our discretionary funding was $81 million, $13.5 million, and $2.7 million for large MPOs, small MPOs, and large cities respectively. Other programs that receive federal aid are the County Local Bridge, County Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, Local Major Bridge, Small Cities, Municipal Bridge, Transportation Alternatives, just to name a few of the items listed in the above chart. Next, we want to touch on the local program summary, the appropriation uses. So here we have a history of the past 5 years, and you're going to see a drop in 2021. One thing we definitely wanted to note, during the pandemic, ODOT did keep our local funding at prior levels. We didn't have any funding cuts to the locals, but the reason that you're seeing a drop there in appropriation uses is due to the expenditures and encumbrance being down majority because of projects being postponed. Now going into the state motor fuel tax distribution. So here we have a chart that breaks down all of fiscal year 21's revenues from the gas and diesel tax. So we received roughly $2.5 billion during fiscal year 21. And of the 38.5 cent per gallon gasoline tax and the 47 cent per gallon diesel tax, ODOT received roughly 23.99 cents of that total. This allocation went to support ODOT's overall program needs and our debt service payments, which amounted to $156 million. The other portions of the funding goes to the counties, municipalities, and townships throughout the state. A portion of the state MFT also goes to Public Works Commission for their LTAP program, which also provides funding for roads and bridges. And then a small portion of the funding also goes to support taxation and some other agencies for their administrative and oversight of the tax distribution. This is a link at the bottom of this PowerPoint slide here for taxation's website for their distribution. So they have some additional material out there for gas tax as well, but this is a good historical depiction through their Tableau visualization. So this page here is a good resource if you want to look at a history of actual distributions out to any of the locals throughout 2017 calendar year through 2021. Basically the middle section at the top and then the map are all able to be used as filters. So you can filter based off the statute that the revenue is coming in, the subdivision type, calendar year. Under the subdivision, there's a little box where you can actually type in the name of a local that you want to actually pull back. So all this filters based off the criteria that are being selected up above. So just wanted to point that resource out for you to be able to search any actual data that you may want to look up. The next piece here is something that we have on ODOT's website. So the link is here on the page. And basically what this is an estimate that ODOT does over the course of the state fiscal year. And currently what's out there is fiscal years 2022 and fiscal years 2023. And these were last updated as of April of 2021. But basically it is an annual estimate of what the locals may anticipate receiving over the course of the state fiscal years. Again, this is an Excel sheet, and there's slicers at the top to be able to filter on. So you can filter based off the ODOT district you're in to see everybody within that district, the county, municipality, township, or the specific county that you want to look at. So all that information is there, again, as a resource, and just wanted to point that out to you as well. Now going into the pandemic impacts. So this first chart here that we wanted to share is something that we looked into, and basically over the last two fiscal years, July 2019 through June 2021, if there would not have been a gas tax increase in July of 2019, then there would have been a shortfall of approximately $1.45 billion in less revenues than what was currently received. So it was just, a visual to show you kind of what would have happened if the pandemic would have taken place and we did not have our rate increase just prior to the pandemic beginning. Next, this is more local focused. So basically looking at what the original estimates were that ODOT created after the gas tax was increased and before the pandemic, we anticipated roughly $1.6 billion going out to the locals. After the pandemic happened, they only realized approximately almost $1.5 billion. So because of that, there was a shortfall of approximately $159 million between February 2020 and September 2021. And then due to the pandemic, one of the things that the federal government did was implement the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, CRISA, providing $332.6 million to Ohio DOT. Of that, $49.3 million was required to go to the large MPOs. And then ODOT's leadership decided to also provide an additional $48.5 million to the locals as well for slips and slides, transportation improvement districts, Turnpike Commission, small MPOs in large cities, and then also assistance with Ohio townships. Now getting into the new infrastructure bill that was passed. So some of you may know it as IIJA, or now BIL, so Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and now replacing that name Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So it's a 5-year bill going from 22 to 2026. It has $550 billion in new investment, $110 billion in new investment for roads and bridges. All the current federal programs have been reauthorized, and they've established a few new programs with the current new bill, one of which is infrastructure resiliency, which is called Protect, carbon reduction, and some new discretionary grant programs. As far as state and local allocations, at this time they're still unknown. Just basically means that we don't have an updated outlook for the locals yet. We're still waiting for information to be shared from the federal government to be able to really anticipate what is going to be received. So right now, it would just be speculative. All right, any questions?
We don't have any questions at this time, but people who are on the webinar as participants are free to submit questions throughout, and then we can always come back at the end and read those off. So thank you so much, Jonathan. We really appreciate it. And next up, we have Brenna Smathers, who is with the State Infrastructure Bank. And I'm making Brenna the presenter right now, so you should see her screen here in just a moment. Thanks, Brenna.
All right, thank you. And can everybody see, Victoria, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen and we can hear you. Great.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brenna Smathers. Like Victoria said, we're going to be taking a look and discussing the State Infrastructure Bank program that we have here at ODOT. And typically it is referred to as the SIB or the Ohio SIB. So a lot of you in the audience might typically hear that instead of the whole State Infrastructure Bank program. So we will be talking about the SIB. I am the SIB program manager at ODOT within the Division of Finance. Some things that we're going to be taking a look at through the presentation. We will talk about some background and highlights of the program. We have a loan program and we have a bond program. We have the SIB portfolio, we have some balances and some numbers. We can take a look at some recent numbers we'll take a look at. And then there's a couple of projects that the SIB was recently part of. We'll also take a look at those. So some history of the SIB. It was created back in 1995 by US Congress. This was intended for Title 23 eligible highway and transit projects. So with that, it is a revolving loan program. So as I get repayments in and as I get applications in, my balances are constantly changing each month. So my available balances to use do change quite often. Ohio was one of 10 pilot states to be selected to start the SIB program. And actually we had the first ever, meaning Ohio, had the first ever SIB loan back in 1996. And that was with Butler County TID. We also have an Ohio legislature that expanded the SIB authority, and that's to include projects like aviation, rail, and waterway. So that expanded our SIB authority to include some more transportation projects that would be eligible to use the SIB. And back in 96, our initial capitalization was $137 million. So we'll take a look at the loan program, the SIB loan program first. And eligibility, eligible borrowers, any public Ohio entity is eligible to submit a SIB loan application. We do not take applications from private entities. Eligible projects that we have a list here, like I said, we expanded authority. So there's a variety of transportation related projects that could be eligible to apply for a SIB loan. Features of the loan program, 100% financing is available. So there isn't a requirement that you have a percentage down or a certain amount down. If you need $800,000 for a particular project, and that's the full amount of the project, you can submit an application for that full amount. So that is available. Maximum term is 20 years. So on the application that we will discuss a little bit later on, when the borrower submits that to me, there is a section that you can say if you want to do 10 years, if you want to do 15 years, 7 years, you can select what term that you would like to do. The maximum is just the 20-year term. Interest rate is fixed at 3%, and that is regardless of the dollar amount or the term that you select. So all of our loans are fixed at 3%. The closing cost, the only thing that we have is a financial advisor fee, and we do have a financial advisor that works for the Ohio SIB, and so that amount is based on the dollar amount of the loan. So that can vary depending on the amount of the loan that is being requested. Deferred repayment, this is something that a lot of people like. So from the time the loan closes, you have 1 year interest free, and then you also have 1 year with no payments due. After that, the second year, there's still no payments due, but your interest will accrue on whatever the outstanding balance is at the time. So from the time the loan closes to the 31st month, the 31st month is when your first payment is going to be due. So you have a little more than 2 years before you have to make that first payment. So some folks like to, they like that once I explain that, how that works to them. The NPO and the CEAO loans are a little bit different. Those payments actually begin the 19th month of the loan, and there's no interest for the first 12 months. Process does take, I have on here 30 to 60 days. I'm leaning more towards the 60 days. There are there's documents that are sent that need to be reviewed and signed. And sometimes we come across something that we, still need to get some details. So just to give plenty of time to get all of the documentation signed, everything that we need during the process, typically I say a couple of months it takes from the time of the application to closing the loan. Applications are accepted year-round, so there's not a cutoff time. There's not a certain period of the year that I can take the application. I am looking at applications at all times of the year. Prepayment penalty, something I tell borrowers to keep in mind is that from the time the loan closes through the 36th month, you will have a prepayment penalty. So if you pay that loan off early, that first 36 months, you're going to have a 3% penalty on whatever your outstanding balance is. So if you wait till that 37th month or after that, and you want to pay that loan off early, you can do that. Sources of repayment, I have listed here, typical sources of repayment on the application that borrowers typically want to use. State motor fuel tax at the top and non-tax revenues. The second one are very common and typical sources of repayment for folks' SIB repayments. Eligible costs, we have here right away, there's a variety of eligible costs on a project that could use SIB funds with the SIB loan. And then we have the application process. So from beginning to end, there's some more folks involved than just myself. So from the time I receive the application, and I usually tell people, you can email that to me. It gets to me a whole lot quicker, especially the way the workplace is right now. If you email me the application along with the past 2 years of financials, because that I also need to get when I get the application, you can email that to me. I will review the application, make sure that we have everything that we need included. If I have any questions, I'll follow up with you, let you know what I need. Once we're good to go there, like I mentioned earlier, we do have a financial advisor that works for the Ohio SIB program. So I will send the details to him. He will take a look, and he assists with determining the creditworthiness and ensuring that that repayment source that's being provided is sufficient to cover the SIB payments. Then he'll make sure no questions are there. The next step is to go to what we have here, the SIB loan committee. So it's not just up to me whether or not a SIB application is approved. I will present the application to the SIB loan committee. I will address any questions or concerns. I'll let them know what the project is, who the borrower is, the dollar amount. Once we address everything that's needed and they're comfortable with it, then we have the approval and we're good to go. I'll reach out to the borrower, let them know that they've been approved, And I'll also let them know and walk through the next steps because like I said, there's documentation that's going to be sent to them and need to be reviewed as well. So I'll let them know what the next steps are. We do have a legal advisor with the Attorney General's office, and they provide legal assistance, and they put together the loan documents that are needed for the SIB loans. So promissory note or loan agreement, for example, they will put those documents together for me, and they will send those directly to the borrower to review and to sign, and then return those back to ODOT. Once I have everything signed, then we are able to close the loan. I will let you know that the loan is closed, and then the next day those funds will be available to use. Next, we have SIB loan criteria, and just a few things to keep in mind. If you're perhaps thinking about applying for a loan, preference is going to be given for new borrowers of the SIB. And we include that just because, as I mentioned before, it is a revolving loan program. My balances are going to be changing every month. So if by chance I get 2 applications to present to the SIB loan committee, and for the types of projects that they are, maybe I don't have enough funds to cover both applications, and just one can be approved at the time and not the other just because we're short on funds. The SIB committee will look to see if we have a new borrower applying for the SIB loan, and they're going to give preference to that new borrower. And that's just because they want to give everybody the opportunity to use the program. We do have borrowers that have multiple SIB loans, or they get SIB loans, pay them off, turn around, and then they want to apply again. So they do want to give as many people the opportunity to use the program as possible. Another thing to keep in mind, I will always maintain discretionary funds in the loan program. So in my GRF funds, I'm going to keep $2 million and then $3 million in federal and Title 23. So that will always be set aside from my available balances to loan. And then last, no more than 50% of the balances that I have available above those reserve amounts will be available for any individual loan application. So what that means, real quick, if I get an application in after my discretionary funds are set aside, and say I have $3 million in GRF, and that's the fund that I need to use, then the maximum I could use for one application is going to be $1.5 million. I need to leave some in there for other applicants that could possibly be wanting to apply for a loan and need some GRF funds. So I need to leave some available to others to borrow. Next, we have the SIB bond program. And here we have our GRF bond program was established in 2006, and our Title 23 bond program was established in 2008. So we also have our ratings, our current ratings in both those programs. And as of September 30th, 2021, we had GRF balances available, $34.4 million, and Title 23 was $99 million. So the intent of the bond program to be created was to fund those larger projects. I keep talking about how my balances change all the time. If somebody submits a large application, a large dollar amount for a big project, and I don't have enough in the loan program to cover that, we could possibly turn to the bond program and use that. The SIB bond program issues investment grade bonds into the capital markets, and it provides funds to borrowers for transportation projects. Tax exempt bonds, long-term fixed rates, and if the ODOT SIB issues the bonds for an entity, it doesn't count against their debt limitation. Closings do take longer with this, and that is just due to additional legal counsel being involved, underwriters, and then going to market. It is the same criteria as the loan program, same application, submitting those past 2 years of financials. We go through that same process when the local entity borrows or requests to borrow. So that all is still the same. Some features of the bond program. 100% financing is available, again, just like I mentioned with our loans. We can do 100% financing if needed. Maximum term is 25 years, a little bit longer than the loans. Interest rate is going to be the current market rates at the time that we were doing the bond issuance. Bond amounts have ranged that ODOT has done from $3 million to $20 million. Transaction cost is going to be a little bit different, 1 to 3% of the issuance depending on the size. and those payments begin immediately. So we talked about how on the loans, you get a little bit of time before you have to make that first payment, and payments will begin immediately with the bond issuance. Here we do have a list of our bond issuances that we've had since inception of the bond program. And here it's been a while since we've had a new issuance. In 2019 was our last one. Here in 2021, we did do a refunding for Toledo Lucas County Port Authority. And what that means is from their issuance that they did in 2011, we did a reissuance, a refunding to lower their interest rate. So that created a savings for the Port Authority of about $668,000. I also have those asterisks there. You can do a loan bond blend. You can do a loan and a bond together if that's something that we need to do just so that we have enough funds to cover the project. That has been done in the past. Next, we have our SIB portfolio and available balances as of September 30th, 2021. Total available to lend at that time, I had 54.3 million. Here, I like to call it's my pots of money. So it's going to depend on what type of project it is, where I'm going to be pulling money from. So I do have different options and I do have different pots of money. So it's going to depend on the type of project it is. Modes of SIB loans and bonds approved as of September 30th. Grand total of $794 million has been approved since the inception of the SIB program. And this, you can see quite a bit. Big piece of that pie is for the highway. And then we have other modes of transportation as well that we have done loans for. Here we have, again, since the inception of the SIB program, we have all of our numbers from the very beginning to the current fiscal year. The total number of loans, approved is 261, with a grand total of $688.4 million. 14 bonds have been approved with a grand total of $105.6 million. And like I said earlier, a grand total of $794 million. So next we have a couple of projects that we're going to take a look at that the SIB has been part of. This first one is for a bond issuance, Akron-Canton Regional Airport Authority. And this was for a gate expansion project. So this added approximately 45,600 square feet of new space. We've renovated existing space. They replaced passenger boarding bridges at all the gates, new restrooms, business lounge, retail space. It goes on, but it was a very significant project for the airport. Lots of improvements were done. Here we have the project funding that the airport had for the project. The SIB bond issuance was a piece of it at $15,680,000. The grand total for the project cost was $37.4 million. And then next we have our SIB loan project, and this is for the city of Zanesville. And this is way more typical of what I see on a regular basis. I get lots of loan applications, not crazy amounts, but they are desperately needed sometimes by the locals. So this one was for improvements on Wayne Avenue, slip repair and culvert replacement. And the city needed help with funding to get the work done. And the project funding, the loan application was $754,000, and that was approved. The total project cost came in at $869,800. They requested a 10-year term, and that also included that financial advisor fee that I mentioned in the beginning. You can roll that in with your loan, include that with your loan, and repay it back that way. So they included that cost in with their loan. And for the city, they pledged their municipal income tax revenue as their repayment source. So that concludes the presentation for the State Infrastructure Bank Program. Just real quick, my information is right here. The SIB information is also on the ODOT website under the programs page. So there is more details there if later you want to look back on that. The link for the application is also on the web. So if you want to take a look at that, that is out there. But I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the SIB program with everybody today. So I think we're going to take questions now.
Yes,
Anybody has?
we've got a couple for you.
Okay.
So I'll start with the first one we received. They would like to know if you can share a little about how using a SIB loan can benefit an agency, even though they may have their own bonding capacity.
Well, I guess it's going to depend on the interest rates that's available, and sometimes there's a few things to look at when it comes to borrowing from the SIB program, if it is going to be beneficial to them. So possibly the interest rate, and then maybe the flexibility of the terms, and like I said, some people really like that deferment repayment period. So there are some features of the SIB program that people really like, but if they if our benefits don't outweigh something else, other options that they have, then that's something that can and has come up. So it's really going to depend on the features that are going to benefit them the best.
Kind of sounds like it's just a tool in their toolbox then.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
Yes.
And then speaking of interest rates, the other question we received was, will the 3% interest rate in the loan program ever be reevaluated or changed?
It actually was reevaluated here recently, and and we decided to stay with the 3% rate. It's not set at a regular time to be reevaluated, but we did do that here at ODOT, and that, like I said, was decided to keep that 3% rate. So as of right now, that is the rate that the SIB loans will continue to be fixed at. So here, I believe that was just earlier in 2021 that was evaluated here at ODOT. And for now, it will stay at the 3%.
Okay, and we got a couple more questions that were typed in while you were answering. So what type of transit projects have been funded by the SIB program?
For the transit projects, that was way before my time, and that could be something that I could look up and find out for sure which projects those were. So that was a little while back, but I could definitely get that information and send that. But it has been a while since we had a transit project with a SIB loan.
Okay, and I will be providing the presenters all of the questions after the webinar concludes, so you'll be able to follow up, Brenna, with the person who asked that question. And then
Yes.
the other question I have for you right now is, do the SIB loans and bonds count as local match towards state federal grants, since the local is paying them off from their funds?
So they could they could not use the SIB loan to repay as a match for the federal or state funds, so that the SIB loan would not be able to be used that way. No.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for you right now, but I want to go back to Jonathan. I have a couple questions that came in for Jonathan after you started presenting. So Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just pose these to you now before we move on to Jennifer. The first one is, how much money is being allocated for transit?
For transit, is there a specific year that they're asking, I guess?
No, just in general.
Okay, so during the last budget bill, there was general revenue fund put in to the budget bill for $70 million each year. And then during this last budget bill that just passed for 22 and 23, general revenue fund is at 37 million, with a stipulation for us to use federal funding for another portion of another like 33 million. So they're keeping it right around that 70 million mark right now.
Okay, the next question I have for you is, when ODOT distributes the gas tax revenue, the 2.5B total, to locals, how are those amounts determined?
Okay, so the one distinction I want to make, ODOT does not distribute. We are a recipient of it just like the locals. Taxation is the distributor. Everything is in statute. and is very kind of complex. So if you want to kind of see that history, there's a few places I can point you. So if you want to provide me with the person asking the question, I can get them some information that they can look at.
Sounds great, and I will do that once the webinar has concluded today. So thank you both so much for answering those questions, and thanks, Brenna, for the great presentation on the SIB. I learn a lot about the SIB every time I hear you talk, so that's wonderful information. Next, we have Jennifer Klein, who's with the Ohio Public Works Commission. So Jennifer, if you're ready.
I am ready. Thank you. I am Jennifer Klein from Ohio Public Works Commission. I am going to give you all an overview of what types of projects OPWC can help fund, and then at the end give a brief overview of our new online web portal that we just launched in August. There we go. So Ohio Public Works is a state funding source, so we have no federal requirements with our funding. You can apply for grants and or loans. They can be combined grant loan combo, or you can apply for one or the other. Our funding is appropriated by the state legislators every 2 years. Our funding comes from the operating budget, the transportation budget, and the capital bill. So there is a combination of legislations that need to be passed by the state legislators so we can keep the money rolling. We have been around since 1987, and we are staff of only 8. So we are a small organization, but we help fund a lot of projects and get a lot of money flowing through the state. So what do we fund? We can fund road, bridge, culvert, water supply, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste projects. The applicant who applies for funding must own and maintain the infrastructure they are applying to improve, and the project must have a minimum useful life of 7 years. So no maintenance projects to qualify as capital improvement project. It has to have a minimum useful life of 7 years. And who can apply? So counties, cities, townships, villages, and water and sewer districts can apply for our funding. We have, the state is broken up into 19 districts, so different than the ODOT districts that you might be used to. So you have to go to our website and look at our district map to see what district you fall into for OPWC. And each district has their own selection methodology and ranking for the projects. So it is our funding is based on, or our awards are based on local decision making. So our funding is set up in the ORC and what the requirements are to and what the locals have to decide on the criteria, but the locals get to decide what is most important in that area. And so they all have a slightly different schedule and slightly different methodologies for ranking all of the projects, but OPWC maintains that they all follow all the ORC requirements and follow a general schedule so we can get all agreements out July 1st every year, which I'll go over the schedule here soon. So first I'll talk about our 2 separate pots of grant money. The first is SCIP, is our State Capital Improvement Program. It is $200 million annually for the whole state. 2 things come off the top of that before they get distributed to the districts. That is our small government program and our emergency program, which I'll talk about later. So the remaining funds get distributed to the 19 districts on a per capita basis, and the districts then use their methodology to give out that money to the top ranked projects. For SCIP, we can pay up to 90% of a total project cost if it is a repair replacement project. If it is a completely new or expansion project, we can only pay for 50% of the project with grant funding. You can combine a skip grant with a skip loan, so we can pay for 100% of a project that way. With LTIP is the Local Transportation Improvement Program, which comes from the gas tax. That is eligible to pay for 100% of total project cost, but it can only be for road or bridge projects. Sorry about that. I've been coughing all morning, so I had to mute myself to not cough in all of your ears. Our grants. And the LTIP grants cannot be combined with loans because the loans come from the skip pot of money. There we go. So our loans come from the skip pot of money, like I said, the State Capital Improvement Program. So every district, the allocation they get from the skip pot of money, 10% of that must be given in the form of a loan. And we've been around for over 35 years. And so as those loans have been repaid back, we also have a RLP loan program or the revolving loan program. So those two loan pots of money cannot be combined together, but you can, every district works to hand out either the skip loan or the RLP loan, and you can combine that with a skip grant. All of our loans are 0% interest, and you get to determine the term of your loan. It can be up to 30 years or the useful life of your project, whichever is less. And there is no, there's no fees or interest or a repayment penalty for paying off early. And loans go into billing once the project is complete, and you have to make payments on your loans in January and July of every year. So it depends on when you complete your project, on when it goes into billing, and so whether your first loan payment will be in January or July, because we send out those invoices in November for the January payment and May for the July payment. So if your project closes in May, you won't have your first loan payment until January of the following year. So there's no exact science to when your loan will go into repayment, but there will be no interest, and the amortization schedule will be made, and you can find on our website once the project is complete and your loan goes into billing. The general timeline for our program, like I said, every district sets their own specific schedule, but in general, our director sends out guidance every year with allocations in April or May. Applications are due to your district liaisons around September or October. The district liaisons score all the projects according to their district methodology, and they meet with the district committees between November and January to approve the slate of projects. And then they must submit the slate of projects to OPWC by the end of February. And so from February to July, OPWC can review all of the slates so we can get agreements released on July 1st of every year. So for you as the applicant, you would apply in the September, October for an agreement the following July. And some of our policies to keep in mind is we want our money to move quickly. So we want you to start construction within 1 year of receiving an agreement. So you can leverage our funding maybe with another type of funding, but you need to look at what your schedule is going to be. If you have something planned for a couple years from now, but it's not ready to go to construction, next summer, you will wait another year to apply for our funding. So you get your project agreement July 1st of every year. You need to start construction of your project by the following June. And then we want projects to be completed within 2 years from starting. But we of course understand that extensions are sometimes needed. With the COVID impacts and delays, we grant extensions. We just want to be kept in the loop on where your project is at, and you can work with your program rep to let them know the status, and so we can keep our internal notes of when a project is going to be wrapped up. Our small government program, which I mentioned earlier, so that comes from the SCIP funding. So it has the same criteria of we can only fund 90% of a project if it is repair replace cost, and 50% of a project if it is new expansion can be funded with a grant. The small government is $20 million every year, and it is a second chance statewide competition. So to be eligible for our small government program, you have to be a village or township with a population of 5,000 or less. You apply at your local district level, and then if you're not successful and do not score high enough at the district level, the district takes the top 7 small government eligible projects below their funding line and sends them to the small government competition. So the small government has a completely separate set of scoring methodology. So you are given the opportunity to edit your application to best score at the small government methodology criteria. For example, the small government caps their grant at 500,000. So you can, if you are a small village and you go to your district requesting $1 million grant, but are unsuccessful at the district level, when you go to the small government competition, you have to keep the project the same, but you can change your request to $500,000 grant and $500,000 loan. And the top 7. We used to, if you are familiar with our small government program, we used to only send the top 5 plus 2. So the top 5 were the only ones from every district. The top 5 projects got scored, and then there were 2 just contingencies in case one of the top 5 from a district fell out for some reason. Last year, the Small Government Commission decided to just go ahead and score all 7 projects from every district. So if you are small government eligible and your district forwards you on to the small government process, you will be scored and ranked accordingly. Our emergency fund, that also comes off the top of the SCIP funding. It just increased to $12 million a year. So we do actually still have some emergency funds. It used to only be about $3.5 million every year for emergency funding, and we would run out extremely quickly. I think last year we ran out of emergency funding the day we got it. We get our funding July 1st, and there was so much rain and slips in the spring of 2020 that we had so many requests by the time July 1st came that we were out of money. But this year, it increased to $12 million a year, and so we do still have some emergency funds available. Emergency funding is for something that requires immediate action. It was caused by some catastrophic event. It's typically what we see are big rain events that cause road slips, and the road washes away, and you can't wait for the district schedule to, for next July for the funds to be made available. We cannot fund things that result of delayed maintenance. It needs to be something unforeseen, and it still had useful life, and it was an unforeseen circumstance. For that, you just apply through your program rep. You don't go through the district process with your liaison. We have a separate one-page application where you describe the event and provide the engineer's estimate and pictures of what happened to your program rep, and our director makes all of the funding decisions for emergencies. We have a new portal, like I mentioned. We launched our new online portal called WorksWise back in August. This is where you will go to submit new applications, to submit new disbursement requests, and you can find your project agreements. We have had good success so far. On our website, we've provided training videos of how to submit an application and how to submit a disbursement request. We have also now have written training manuals. So if you have been using the system and you still have questions or get confused, I encourage you to go to our website and go to our WorksWise page to look at those training materials. If you are familiar with us but you did not know about WorksWise, I also encourage you to go to our website and go to the WorksWise page, and you can request a login for your community. So you only need a login if you will be the one submitting an application or submitting a disbursement request. We have a public portal that you do not need a login for, where you can view everything. You can view all of our open projects. You can view if you have a loan that is in billing, you can find the invoice there. You can find disbursements that have been made on your project if it's still an active project. So you only need a login if, like I said, you are the one actually submitting a new application or a disbursement. Some tips for success as you are submitting a new application is to know your district's methodology. Like I said, every district has a separate scoring criteria. So you can use that to self-score and see how you think you rank. You can get in contact with the district liaison to see what the typical cutoff line is for funding, to know if you should change your request to be a loan or a grant, or to maximize your points so you can get funded. Be sure your application is complete, clear, and concise. With the new portal, we are helping you with that. The system will not allow you to submit an application if it is missing some required criteria. So it can be frustrating at first if you think you have submitted something but the system disagrees with you. Just reach out to your program rep and review the training manuals. The system is set up to make sure you're not missing any of the required materials. And like I said earlier, only submit a project when you are ready to be awarded within the next year. So if your project is not ready to go to construction within the next year, wait to apply until it is ready. And be mindful and reasonable of engineering costs. We want to pay for the brick and mortar construction costs. Our funds are allowed to pay for engineering right away and construction, but we do like to put the emphasis on the construction costs. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have a question for you. Someone would like to know, are all applications sent to small governments eligible to receive funding, or will the top 5 be given preference, then the alternatives considered only if funding is still available?
Yes, great question. So all 7 are now eligible. The district has to rank them, and the top 5 get points from the district. So it's not impossible for the number 6 and 7 small government from a district to get funded at the small government level, but they don't get the points from the district.
And that is the only question I had for you, but I'm certain people will reach out now that they have your contact information. So I want to thank everybody who presented on the webinar today. Everybody did a great job, and it was so nice, Jennifer, hearing about your program, which still deals with what we work on but isn't an ODOT program. So thank you so much for your time. Andrea, would you like to say anything to wrap us up?
Again, I would like to reiterate a big thank you to Jonathan, Brenna, and Jennifer. Thank you so much. I hope that our friends, our locals, and our consultants that are online in our district offices have learned as much as we have today. And so thank you to everybody, and thank you for a great webinar, and thank you to Victoria for moderating. We appreciate it.
Happy to do it. We did have one final question that came in, which, since we have a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and ask it of Jennifer. We have a person who said they recently uploaded their signed grant agreement on the portal, and they'd like to know how long it normally takes to show the signed agreement was reviewed.
So if it is, you're probably talking about a new grant agreement that was released this July, and so you printed it and signed it and uploaded it. So you'll need to get in contact with your program rep to let them know that you have uploaded a signed copy. With the new portal, we want the application, or no, we want the agreements to be e-signed. So when they get sent out, they get sent emailed to the project CEO for their e-signature. And if you do it that way, it automatically gets uploaded to WorksWise, and the status of the project changes from pending to approved. So if you just upload a ink signed PDF, the status has to be manually changed by your program rep.
Great question, great information. Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in the upcoming parts 2 and 3 of Show Me the Money, I did drop the registration links in the chat box, but you can also find those registration links on the LTAP webpage. So thank you everyone for your time today. We appreciate your attentiveness, and we look forward to hosting you on a future webinar.